Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
So yeah, just to set the context of the call for the recording, I'll be giving you a walkthrough of FA2, which is a multi-asset interface for Tezos and is primarily used for building NFT-based projects on Tezos. So this is what we'll be having, we'll be looking at for the call. First, we'll have a look at tokens and standards. Then I'll give you a brief intro on NFTs or non-fungible tokens. Then we'll actually deep dive into FA2, how it is actually implemented, the storage structure for FA2, the interface it supports. And finally, I'll also give you a sneak peek of the project that I have been working on for the past few months, which is Cryptus, which was initially started off as which was initially started in the fellowship last year. So yeah, let's start. Tokens and standards. So tokens are digital assets defined by a project or a smart contract and are built on a specific blockchain. Tokens can be of two types. They can be of utility or they can be of security token. Utility tokens are sold as a part of fund development and can be used as a part of network of project. Security tokens are more considered, are more in the lines of an investment contract. So more or less, there are two kinds of tokens on a high level: non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you must have some kind of idea on tokens and what is fungibility and non-fungibility. So I'll not go get into details. Now let's talk about standards. Why are standards even needed in the first place? So standardization aims to solve collective action problems, the situations in which all the users would benefit by cooperating, but find it too costly to do it alone. In case of a token, the API standard has already been chosen at the time of contract development. That is before the user accesses it, making standardization necessary. The tokens represent ownership on the blockchain or even a part of the project. So it becomes very essential for all the tokens to be accessible by and through different kinds of wallets. And obviously, we can't have different wallets. We can't have customized different wallets for every new token that is put up in the blockchain. So standardization becomes essential to make sure that every token on the chain follows and supports a common interface for making it accessible and usable for the outer world. In Tezos, we have two token standards, FA 1.2 and FA2. FA 1.2 is primarily an equivalent of ERC20, those for those of you who are from an Ethereum background, which is primarily used for making fungible tokens. Today, we'll be having a look at FA2, which is primarily used for making NFTs, but is not limited to making just non-fungible tokens. It can also be used for making fungible tokens. So before that, let's take a step back and actually look at what NFTs are actually. Although I'm pretty sure all of you must have some idea of NFTs. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens, more or less, which means that they are unique and cannot be replaced with something else. For example, a Bitcoin is fungible. Trade one other Bitcoin for another, and you'll have the exact same thing at the end of the day. But instead, a one-of-a-kind trading card, however, is a non-fungible. If you traded it for a different card, you would have completely something different. So summing up, a non-fungible token is a unit of data stored on blockchain that certifies a digital asset to be unique and therefore not interchangeable. NFTs can be used to represent various different items such as photos, videos, audios, and many other type of digital files over the blockchain. For the first 25 years of the internet, we couldn't own any digital assets, which eventually led the creation of NFTs. Now, NFTs have actually been quite the talk around the world for the past year now. NFTs worth more than a billion have already been sold till date. The most popular ones being Axie Infinity, NBA Top Shot, and Here and Now. Here and Now is actually a Tezos NFT marketplace that has now officially surpassed OpenSea and all other marketplaces in all other ecosystems to be the number one NFT marketplace by users and by volume overall. So to get started with NFTs on Tezos, you'll definitely need to understand the FA2 token in detail. So those of you who are going to be working in NFT space for the fellowship and also after that should be able to get some value out of this. For those who aren't working in NFT space or any other token space, well, maybe you guys should think again. Maybe you should work. Maybe you should have a part of your project as a token or as an NFT. Moving on to FA2. What exactly is FA2? So FA2 is an independent is an is independent of the token type and supports both single and multiple token contracts via a single standard. All entry points work with batch operations, allowing multiple transfers of different tokens and or different types to be executed in a single atomic transaction. Now, this thing is very powerful. FA2 inherently allows batching your transactions, so you can literally transfer thousands and thousands of tokens in just one transaction, that too in an atomic way. The standard requires developers to handle common considerations such as defining the contract's token type, whether it's fungible, whether it's non-fungible, whether it's semi-fungible, and all the other and build all the other customizations on top of this, such as contract upgradability, supply operations, whitelisting addresses, minting, burning of tokens, etc., etc. Now, FA2 is independent of token type, so you can literally build any kind of token using FA2 on the Tezos blockchain. FA2 has a config object, which basically allows you to set config for the particular contract, and you set all the config and you are ready to go with your contract. Now, FA2 proposal was actually inspired and directly inspired by direct experience of the guys who actually built the EIPs and who had a part to play in building the ERC20 and ERC721 tokens. So rest assured, Tezos and the FA2 standard takes care of all the vulnerabilities and all the problems that developers usually used to face in the Ethereum ecosystem. In the long run, a token standard which is agnostic to token type may produce stronger network effects and less friction, as wallets and external applications need to support just one core transport API across multiple token types. And FA2 exactly aims to do that. That is why it has been very successful inside the Tezos ecosystem, and also as an NFT, also as an NFT contract in the overall blockchain ecosystem. FA2 aims to provide a usable permission policy at the right level of granularity, which is usually missing in standard contracts. In case of multiple asset contracts, the foundation who primarily works on this standard has proposed to introduce operators by token type. So again, to facilitate more permission usability on the contract. So FA2 also supports operators which can be used, which can be delegated the permission to trade for the user tokens. So these are the following benefits that FA2 provides in general. One, offers a standard for unified token contract, no need for separate contracts for FA for an fungible or non-fungible token, supports a wide range of tokens inside. Instead of just having fungible and non-fungible tokens, you can also have semi-fungible tokens, which are still under implementation in the FA2. It also provides to transfer token semantics, supports various transfer permission policies, referring to the inbuilt operator system that is built into the FA2. And it's also resistant to the ERC20 vector attack vulnerability. You guys can read about this vulnerability after this presentation. Moving on to the actual implementation of the FA2. Obviously, I'm not gonna go through the actual code implementation. You guys have already made it to the fellowship. You guys are more than smart enough to figure out for that yourself. However, what I'll discuss today is the approaches in which an FA2 is implemented in conventional ways. So the first one is monolith. The second one is wrapper. The third and last one is a transfer hook. So the monolith, the first one, in this implementation, we limit all the contract code, all the logic of our app along with the FA2 core logic inside one single contract, and we expose all the entry points for the dApps to interact with it. Of course, the custom API goes in first, which allows you to define the structure of FA2 contract. Do you need it to be fungible? Do you need it to be non-fungible? Do you want to whitelist IP addresses? All of that goes into this custom permissions and custom config. On top of that, you also add your game logic or whatever system, whatever marketplace logic you want to build, you want to use that contract for inside the same contract, and you have a monolith single contract that takes care of everything. Next, we have a wrapper implementation, which allows you to separate your custom logic outside of the FA2 core contract. So the way this works is actually very similar to how normal contracts or normal NFT contracts work in general. Your contract, your customized contract inherits the FA2 contract, and then you make all the necessary customizations on top of that, exposing all the entry points on your from your custom contract. This way you separate out the core logic and core ethics of the FA2 contract and still make customizations on top of that. The third one and the least used one is the transfer hook approach, where you have two completely separate contracts. One is the FA2 core logic contract and the other one is a transfer hook. This will take care of all the operations that are to be done through the FA2 contract. So this acts as not a wrapper exactly, but this acts as an isolated contract altogether. This does not inherit FA2 core contract. Instead, it calls the FA2 contracts functions. So there's a bit of inter-contract calling involved in the third and last approach. The most used approach is wrapper contract, in which you build customization on top of the existing contract. When I started building out projects on Tezos in the NFT space, I also prefer the wrapper contract. You can read about them in more in details. You'll find blogs about them on Medium and so you can have a look at them in details as well. Now let's have a look at the storage structure that FA2 contract follows. So one, we have an administrator that sort of takes care of all the admin routes of the contract. So this administrator is the owner of the contract. There are a few functions that are only limited to the administrator, and this is the field that stores the address of the administrator of the contract. Then we have another field, which is all tokens. This is a NAT field, positive integer field, which stores a total number of tokens. This can be useful where the supply of an NFT or supply of any kind of token is useful. Then next we have a ledger field, which is a big map. Now, as soon as you guys become familiar with SmartPy and all the other tools that are used to build Tezos, it'll be very clear to you guys what a big map is. Essentially, it's like a hash map. If you come from a Java or Python background, it's very similar to hash map. So we have a ledger, which is of type of hash map, which stores the ownership of the token. So this will basically map which address owns which token ID. Then we have a metadata big map, which is used to store metadata of the smart contract. Metadata is nothing, it's just like an extra information about the contract. So if someone comes across your contract address, that person should be able to know what exactly this contract is supposed to do. So metadata helps with that. Then we have operators, which is again a big map, hash map, whatever. This stores permission for the tokens. So again, FA2 has inbuilt set of permissions. So you can have operators which can to which users can delegate their tokens, and then operators can take care of these tokens, trade them, sell them, and actually also they can also mint tokens. Then we have a paused field, which is a straight boolean, pretty self-explanatory, to pause or to allow transactions on your FA2 contract. So if this field is turned to true, every transaction that you do on FA2 contract will be failed essentially. This is useful when you maybe you want to upgrade to a different contract, or you're facing high traffic on your project or something like that. Then the last and the most important field is the token metadata, uh, which stores your metadata about each and individual token. So let's say if you have an NFT, the metadata of that particular NFT would go into this big map. We'll have a look, we'll have a deeper look into the storage structure on Better Dev Call shortly. Before that, let's also have a look at interfaces that FA2 supports. Interfaces are nothing but functions that FA2 supports. So we have a boilerplate transfer function, which, as the name suggests, allows users to transfer tokens from one address to others. Then we have a balance of interface, which gets you the total number of tokens owned by a particular address or in general. Then we have a total supply interface, which gives you all the number of tokens stored in that contract. Then we have token metadata, where using this function you can retrieve metadata for a single contract, or for a single token, or for a bunch of token IDs. Then we have an update operator, which basically allows you to set operators for FA2, which can then be used for various multiple applications. And then we have the token meta, which stores and which allows you to get metadata from different token IDs. Now there's a short summary of what the difference is between FA 1.2 and FA2, as you have already had a session on FA 1.2. Now I'm assuming you guys would also have a rough idea on what FA2 is. So this, you can always refer back to this slide if you need to boil down on what token do you actually need to use for your project. Coming on to the last part of the FA2 ecosystem is OpenMentor. OpenMentor is a dApp framework which enables the creation and collection of NFTs on Tezos. So this enables anyone to create NFTs by filling in just a few fields, create new collection contracts, see their contracts like across contracts, and enable marketplace capabilities to trade on them. So you guys can also check out OpenMentor. It's completely open source on GitHub. It's actually built by the Tezos Foundation, and it's a pretty good way to build your own NFT marketplace. So this was all about NFTs and marketplaces in general. Now let me quickly show you the project that I built during the fellowship last year, which was called CRICTES, and for which essentially I received support from Tezos Foundation and a grant of $8,000 to continue that project. So this is CRICTES. CRICTES is a sports NFT marketplace focused on cricket players. It offers limited edition cricket collectibles in the form of cards. Every card is unique NFT on the Tezos blockchain, representing a cricket player, and every card has its own unique set of attributes. On top of being an NFT marketplace, CRICTES also aims to host fantasy games that put the offered cards in use in the near future. So this is the landing page. We have three main functions, or three main things that you can do on the platform. You can collect limited edition cricket collectibles or cricket cards, trade them on an open marketplace, also put them into use or play with them, as we say in fantasy matches, and earn rewards in turn. So we have three different collectible tiers. We have a standard tier, which will have 70 cards for per player. Then we have a rare tier, which has 25 cards. Then we have the epic tier, which just has 5 cards for every player. Then we have the compete section, where you can select and put in 5 cards of your choice, put them in a fantasy match, and then you will get rewarded according to the leaderboard after the match ends. For this particular project for CRICTES, I also happen to use the FA2 standard. it was not up to the mark when I started building on that, but it has been improving since then. Now it's actually at a pretty good standard. So for quick test for cards, I used FA2 standard and I used IPFS to store all the images of the cards. And you can actually go on and check each and every card image on IPFS directly. IPFS, for those of you who don't know, is an interplanetary file storage system, which basically on high level allows you to store images in a decentralized manner and immutable manner. Then we have a bunch of FAQs, and we are running our communities, Discord and Twitter communities respectively for ClickTest. Now this project started kicked off as a fellowship project, but now is being sort of transferring, migrating to a full-blown project, which will be launched very soon on Tezos mainnet, thanks to the support from Foundation and TIF through the way. This project is right now is in beta testing, in private beta actually, and you guys are actually one of the first folks who will be having the access and who are actually having a look at this project. So we have a bunch of few different screens and different things to do on the platform, and you guys are more than welcome to try out the platform anytime you want. So I think that was all from my side for today. If you guys have any questions and any doubts, we can take them up right now.
Thank you, Shubham. So any questions?
Shubham, you talked about representing NFT as videos, right? So, like, what length of videos were you talking about? Was it the GIFs or like a movie length, 1 hour, 2 hours?
It actually depends on the project you're trying to make. So, and anyway, the photo, the image, or the asset that you are going to store is ultimately going to get stored on IPFS. So it's completely up to you. There's no limitations on the size. There's no size barrier for storing something like GIFs or videos on IPFS. So you can look forward to store any kinds of videos, GIFs of any size. In fact, you talked about storing or making video NFTs. TopShot, NBA TopShot is a great example that makes use of video NFTs for representing basketball shots. It's quite an interesting project, and it's been like booming for the last 4 months. It's super popular in the basketball and NFT space. So if you are looking forward to build something like that, I would highly recommend you have a look at TopShot first.
Okay, thank you. But I want, like, if the larger the size of the file, won't it be slower to access it for a user? Like,
Yeah.
not as a collectible, like say if a person were to stream something which is on the IPFS, so the whole process gets very slow, right? Slowed down the larger the file size.
For sure, the process will be much slower as compared to only if you were storing photo in comparison to the video. But now there are all kinds of scaling solutions built on top of NFTs. So just to take for an example, I faced a similar issue even for photos when I was making ClickTest. So when you make a lot of requests to IPFS, it just breaks down, and the images take a bit of time to load. So what you can actually do is incorporate a scaling solution in your project itself. So you can have the original images, have the original asset stored on IPFS, and make a copy of that and stored in on S3 just for streaming purposes. This is what we actually did for ClickTest, and it worked out well. Now we can have literally thousands of images displayed at a single time, and you won't have any issues. So I think you may have to come up with something like this to solve for the video problem.
Yeah, okay. So what is S3?
S3 is Amazon S3 simple storage service. If you are into cloud computing and stuff like that, it's basically a service provided by Amazon, which allows you to store photos, videos, and any kinds of files.
All right.
Hi, I had a question
Hi, Uday.
regarding ClickTest. So basically, in every season, you being the admin or the owner of the thing, you mint those cards, right?
Correct. Yes. It's not an open marketplace. It's sort of more like a closed marketplace. So we being the admins of the app, we being the controller of the app, we mint the card and make them in circulation. After that, after the user owns a particular card, he's free to trade it on any platform. In fact, he can also take it out of the platform and trade it any other open NFT marketplace like OpenSea, Here and Now, Calament.
All
So
right.
this was a gist of the trick test.
And how does a user collect the said card? Like if it is suppose minted on the first day of the season, so how does a user, like, is it randomly distributed along the people in the community, or is there a like, ranking system, or I wanted to know that.
Got it. So this is the point that I actually debated with my team a lot. There were multiple different approaches to hand over the cards to user, but for now we'll be arranging auctions. So after after particular interval in particular frequency, we'll arrange auctions which will sort of put up 200 to 250 cards live on the marketplace, and then users can actually go on the marketplace, bid for them. After 48 hours, whoever the highest bidder is gets the card. So this is what we are going for right now.
Interesting. That's nice to know. I was thinking about it. And actually, can you repeat the name of that huge marketplace you were telling? I think HEN or something.
Yeah, it's Here and Now. It's actually a Swiss marketplace, if I'm not wrong. It spells like HICETNUNC. So you can search it for anywhere and you will easily find it. It's very, very popular in the Tezos ecosystem. It's actually going to be, and it's actually surpassed OpenSea to become the #1 NFT marketplace for quite some time now.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Sanchit, as well, for sending the link.
Hi Shubham. I had a question about the IPFS storage. Does storing files on IPFS cost gas, and is it proportional to the size of the file?
No, apparently storing anything on IPFS won't cost you gas. IPFS is actually altogether a different concept. It is not dependent on any blockchain. So you can have an asset stored on IPFS, use it on Ethereum, use it on Tezos, use it on Solana, use it on any kind of blockchain. And it's not, IPFS is not actually a blockchain. It's like a decentralized protocol for storing files. So answering your question, no, it doesn't cost you gas to store any kind of file on IPFS. There are multiple services which you can use for storing files on IPFS. Pinata is what is most used in the Tezos ecosystem. There's also Infura, which is mostly used in Ethereum ecosystems. On top of and instead of using an external service, you can also spin up your own IPFS node, host it somewhere on the cloud, and you're good to go. And you're allowed to sort of upload images and stuff on IPFS directly.
Got it. Thanks. Very cool.
I had a question that if we want to develop a public marketplace like that, so that people can uh, like upload their own art and make it as an NFT. So can it be stored in IPFS anyway, if the
Yeah,
user want to do it?
yeah. So whenever you talk about open marketplaces, the open NFT marketplaces, the NFT marketplaces that allows users to mint NFT in the first place, you can you can also store that images on IPFS directly. Like if you have a closer look at OpenSea, Calament, Here and Now, these are all the kinds of marketplaces that you just mentioned, and they all store their assets on IPFS. So it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Can there be multiple ownership for this type of token? these NFTs?
Multiple ownerships, as in you mean fractional NFTs?
Yeah, yeah.
For now, in my knowledge, I'm not sure of this, but in my knowledge, FA2 doesn't support fractional ownerships yet. But obviously, you can build some customizations on top of it to make it fractional.
Or
I
we can-
hope this answers your question.
Yeah, or we can like make n copies of an NFT, just kind of denote that each NFT will have 1/n ownership.
Yeah, for sure. It's totally up to you, the approach you want to take it for making the NFT fraction, but it's possible. And FA2 is very, very flexible in adding customizations on top of that. So that won't be a major blocker in my opinion.
Is the feature of multi-signature also there in FA2, or is it only in FA 1.2?
No, it's not. It's right now not supported by FA2, but again, you can also build some customizations on top of that to enable that as well.
Okay.
Okay, I think we have question from Big Vijay as well over the chat.
Okay. Digvijay, for some reason, I'm not able to see the chat. Can you ask the question by directly unmuting?
Sure. So as there are problems with IPFS around, like if it is in cache, then the files are dropped. So does it make sense to use ARV instead of IPFS as it has proper incentivization?
ARVs as in?
Have you heard of ARV protocol for file storage?
No, I'm not sure of that.
Okay, no worries.
But yeah, anyway, until and unless it stores and it takes care of all the principles that are of NFTs, which makes them immutable, if it takes
Right.
care of that, I think it's more than enough and it can be used as an alternative on IPFS.
Right.
Cool. Any other questions in the chat?
I don't think so. We have one from Sanchit. Sanchit, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Oh, I got it. He answered it in the other fellow. So yeah.
Okay, all right. So any more questions to answer? I think we can wind up the session. Thank you, Shubham.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you so
Shubham,
much, guys.
if I have any questions,
Thank you so
later,
much.
how will I contact you?
Yeah, sure. You can reach me out on Telegram, on LinkedIn. You can reach me out on anywhere. I'll
Okay.
actually drop my name in the chat, but I'm not sure if chat is working or not. It's behaving weird on my side. Maybe Sneha, if you could share my Telegram handle with them.
Yeah, I will share. I'll share.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, Sneha and Denver, for having me here. And all the best for your fellowship ahead.
Thank you, guys. So we have one more workshop happening at 8 o'clock. So I'll see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Shubham.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.